replacements. If the king is let go, if the king is fired, your CEO is fired, the manager is fired, the quarterback is fired, you need to have somebody in the wings ready to go. 1 Samuel 15. What page is that, someone? 401? 201? 201. We're just going to pick up the last 2 verses of chapter 15. Now, a lot of these names, unless you're familiar with the story or the context, you're not going to have any idea who these people are. Some of them we're just going to skip over. There's 3 main characters here this morning that we're going to look at, okay? So, verse 34. Then Samuel went up to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house in Gibeah. Okay? Of Saul. Went up to his house in Gibeah of Saul. Okay? So we've got 2 people here so far, Samuel and Saul. Okay? Does anybody know who Samuel was? Samuel's a prophet. Okay? Pretty much just a spokesperson for God. Okay? He's the dominant religious figure of the day is Samuel, okay? Now who is Saul? Does anybody know who Saul is? He's the king. He's the king of Israel, okay? This is back when there wasn't a divided kingdom. There was one kingdom, the Hebrew people, the Israelites. Saul was a king. Does anybody know what number of king he was? Number 1. Yep, good job, Jay. He was the very first king in their line. Now, if you read back through 1 Samuel, we're going to see that God didn't want the people to have a king. They kind of had this back and forth, okay? He wasn't interested at this point in having a king for them. They wanted a king, and God says, well, here's what your king is going to do to you. It wasn't really a for you. Here's what the king is going to do to you. If you want this is your choice. This isn't mine, okay? So God was trying to discourage them. Samuel was trying to discourage the people from electing or anointing a king, but the people said, well, we want it, and God said, fine. We'll go ahead and give it to you if that's what you want. Kind of like how we deal with kids sometimes. Fine, you want this that bad? I'll give it to you. You may not like it after you get it, but I'll give it to you, okay? So he gives them the king. And throughout kind of the story, there's really this back and forth between this guy Samuel and the king Saul. Okay, Saul is the king, and he has kind of the physical power, the physical might. He's got the army. He's got kind of he's got the, not even the popular power, but he's got kind of the physical might as the king. But then you've got this guy Samuel, who is the religious authority of the day. And he's got God behind him, more or less. And he's really also got more the popular support in that the people pay attention to him. They recognize that God is behind Samuel and that God isn't always behind Saul and what he does, okay? So there's this somewhat on and off tension between Samuel and between Saul, all right? So, verse 35, and Samuel did not see Saul again until the day of his death. But Samuel grieved over Saul, and the Lord regretted that he had made Saul king over Israel. Okay? So, Saul, they meet. There was an issue. If you read all of chapter 15, you'll see this real split between Saul and Samuel. Saul defied what Samuel and God had told him. It was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And so Samuel goes his way and Saul goes his way. If you look on a map, if you've got a Bible map at home or you can get online and look at it, the 2 homes aren't very far apart. They're less than 10 miles apart, okay? So the easy distance to even back then that you could get together and see somebody, but they never see each other again, and it's a few years. So a big split here between the two men, okay? And this is going to mark, this is really the beginning of the end for Saul. This is it. This is the end of Saul's kingdom, okay? This is the end of his reign as king. This is almost a metaphor for not only it's a metaphor for not only Samuel departing from Saul, from being his friend, from being his confidant, from being his spiritual leader, but it's also a metaphor for kind of God's departure from Saul. Okay, so God is saying, this is it. for you as king. Does anybody have a title for chapter 15 in their Bibles? Anybody have one there? Do the NIVs even have a title? What's that? Okay, Saul destroys. Anybody else have anything different? Mine says, what's that? That's it. The Lord rejects Saul as king. This chapter is essentially that this is it for Saul, and this break between Saul and Samuel is really the event. Okay, so this is it. This is it. It's over for Saul. Even though, interestingly enough, we're going to see how this unfolds here in just a little bit. Okay. Now Saul had all. Now, you might know the story. Saul had all the makings for a great king. Physically, he was an imposing man. It says in the scripture he was at least a head taller than everybody else. He was a big guy. If you know the story of David and Goliath, David doesn't wear or probably can't wear Saul's armor. It's too big for him, okay? Fiona's in this stage now where she likes to wear her mom's clothes. And she kind of, it's rather humorous seeing this kid that's this tall wearing clothes for somebody who's, a little bit taller. Fiona's quickly approaching that height, much to Brienne's chagrin. But Saul had all the great makings of a king. If anybody was going to make it as a king, it was going to be Saul. He was the guy. He was supposed to be it, but he didn't make it. You can go back and look at that through 1 Samuel to see why he kind of didn't make it. Sometimes we're not always given a great answer as to why, but the issue is he doesn't make it. And so here we come to chapter 16. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you grieve over Saul?" And that's, we just saw that there was grief. Samuel was there, kind of helped raise Saul. They were there together. Saul, he anointed Saul before he became king. He walked along with Saul. So there was a friendship there, and that's over. And it's been hard on Samuel, or it is hard on Samuel. How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. Okay? So that oil, that had only been done one time in the history, this anointing of a king with oil. Saul was the first one. Yes, it only happened once before, the anointing of a king. And God tells Samuel, okay, go get your horn. We're going to do this over again. If you look at this, this is really a coup that's taking place. What's a coup d'etat? Got a rhetorical question. You guys can all jump in there. What's a coup d'etat?
When the military will take over the government.
Yeah.
Get rid of the leader and take it over.
Yeah, typically, oftentimes it's violent, but it's typically a military takeover of the government, whoever's in power. Okay, this is this is kind of like a mini coup that's taking place. Okay, who's the king? Saul. God has rejected Saul, but he is still the king. He's still the king, even though God has rejected him. Okay, he's still got the power. He's got the army. If he wants to cut your head off, Saul can cut your head off. He can do whatever he wants. Okay. So when Samuel decides, God tells Samuel, go anoint another king, how do you think a king might react to that? He's not going to be too happy, right? What's another word for that? It starts with a T. Treason, right? Well, Saul is somewhat of a tyrant, but it's treason. That's what he's doing. If he takes that oil and goes and anoints another king while Saul is still the king, that's treason. And Samuel recognizes this. Look at verse 2. Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he's going to kill me." Okay? Samuel recognizes this is a dangerous situation. This is a coup. If I go and anoint another king while Saul is still king, he's going to be mad. He's going to be really mad. He's going to kill me, okay? So this isn't good for Samuel. So he has to come up with a reason why he's going to go out prancing around the countryside with his horn of oil. Okay, what am I going to do? And the Lord said, verse 2, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. When he goes to see Jesse, it's not that far. Again, Bethlehem isn't that far from this area, okay, from Saul. If Saul finds out that Samuel anoints a new king, word is going to get back to Saul. So what's my cover story? I've got to come up with a story so Saul doesn't kill me. So what's his cover story? Well, go say you're going to sacrifice and you got to anoint some of the people that are going to help you out or something like that. And so that's Samuel's cover story. I'm going to go anoint Jesse's boys and we're going to go sacrifice together. So that's his legitimacy. He's going to go visit Jesse and he's going to look for a new king, okay? So who is it going to be? Who's it going to be? He travels to Bethlehem and he meets Jesse, okay? Samuel meets Jesse and he says, verse 5, he says, well, interestingly, look at verse 4. This gives you a clue as to how people viewed Samuel. Somebody read verse 4 to us. Nice and loud.
Samuel did what the Lord said. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. They asked, do you come in peace?
Thank you, Jess. So, seeing Samuel approach your city, I mean, he was a representative of God. What's he going to do? Have they done something wrong? Is it Sodom and Gomorrah again? Is he going to call down fire and brimstone, or is this a nice visit? Is this a firing visit or a nice visit, okay? And he said, we've come peaceably, verse 5. We've come to sacrifice, and I need to look at your sons. I'm going to consecrate them, okay? Bring your sons, bring all your boys to me, and we're going to look them over. Verse 6, when they came, Samuel, looked on Eliab and thought, surely the Lord's anointed is before him or before me, okay? Oh, this guy looks like a king. I don't know. What's a king look like? What do you think a king looks like? I don't know. Probably a big guy, maybe imposing. Maybe he's, what else would you look for in a king? What's that? Cute. Okay, cute. Prince, who is it? Prince William. So, what else? Big guy, probably, maybe he, I don't know. Something impressed Samuel about Eliab, right? And interestingly enough, what was it about Saul? Saul looked the part. That didn't go very well. Yet Samuel's kind of falling back into the same thing, looking for somebody who looks the part. And what's the response? Verse 7, the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. And then the key verse here is, for the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart. Okay? And so it goes. He brings all the other sons before him. And Samuel gets the message because it's kind of like the conveyor belt. They just come in one after another. Nope, nope, nope. And then it gets to kind of the nervous point. They go through all the sons, and Samuel's like, is that all you got? I was sent here by God. Is that it? But you got to give Samuel some credit here. That he brought 7 boys before him. God said, go there. I'm going to find my king there. And he's seen them all, and he says, none of these look particularly good. You ever shop for a car or whatever it might be, and you look them over, and you're like, I don't know if any of these particularly exactly what I want, but I'll settle for this one. Anybody ever, you settle for things? Hopefully none of you settled for your spouse, but we settle. Samuel doesn't settle. He goes back there. Samuel doesn't settle. Okay, he says, "Is this all you got? Isn't there anybody else? Don't you have another kid waiting in the wings somewhere?" He said, "Well, as a matter of fact, yes. Yes, I do have another son, but he's out watching the sheep. He's too little. He's too young. Let me go and get him. And what's his name? David. You probably, you might know that story, okay? And Samuel says, well, go get him for me. Go get him for me. Bring him in, okay? Bring him in. And so he goes and gets him. And this is interesting. Because what did he say? Somebody go back and look at verse 7. What's the message from verse 7? God ignores what and looks at what? Right. God ignores the outward appearance and looks at the heart, at the inward appearance, right? But what does verse 12 say?
He had a fine appearance.
Yes. He wasn't Igor, he's not ugly. He doesn't have two heads or something. He's good looking. He's handsome. He's a young man. He's well built. What's going on? This is completely opposite of what it should be. God looks at the outward appearance, yet the guy he chooses is what? Good looking. What's going on? I thought of it. I was like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. What's going on here? And I don't necessarily have, the Bible doesn't give us an answer as to why, why he was ruddy. We're not really sure what this means. It might mean he's just good looking and healthy, or it might mean he had red hair. The same word's used for Esau, and Esau was covered with red hair. So we're not really sure what that means. Tom?
Well, you don't have to be ugly to have a good heart.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the heart is what it's looking for. It happens to be fine appearance, but it could also be that if you're good, it may come out.
Okay, so possibly that. But whenever you read Old Testament stories, nothing is ever put in there by accident. The Hebrew writers, sometimes English writers and our writers today, we get wordy. We love to add words and make it all flowery. That's not the way they worked. If there was something in there, it was there on purpose. So he had a fine appearance. So I thought about this. This is just my opinion here on why this happened, why this is emphasized. Because again, it's not put in there by accident. It's emphasized that he was handsome. My guess is, and again, this isn't the gospel according to Josh or whatever, but my guess is it's a statement. It's a point that we judge by outward appearance, right? And we don't get it right. It's kind of like saying, you judge by the outward appearance, but you're not even that good at it. Right? Because who is the one that, we didn't go into it too much, but Samuel brings all his other boys out, and which is the one he leaves behind? David. The one who is fine, handsome, and well built. He leaves him behind. He brings out all his other boys. So, yeah, you judge by outward appearances, but you're not even that good at it. That's my guess as why this is included. I don't know if that's right or not. That's just I can't find anybody, I looked through all my commentaries and things. Nobody addresses it. But it's in there for a reason. My guess is it's to point out that, you judge by outward appearances, but look, you're not even that good at it. The king the king that God chooses for himself should have been the one you picked anyway, because he was the best looking of the crew. Dawn, have you ever heard anything different? Have you ever heard anything on that?
No, but it's not in there by accident.
What's that?
But it's totally not in there by accident.
Yeah, it's there for a reason, and it's there really close to verse 7. So you judge by outward appearances, but heck, you're not even that good at it. You better start operating according to God's standards. Yeah, I mean, he's young. He's still young, so he isn't as developed, as tall as the other people. But he's certainly good looking. So they skip over him. They leave him. But he is the one. Okay. The Lord said, "Rise and anoint him." He is the one. You can go on to the next verse, Dawn. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power. Samuel then went to Ramah. It's very anticlimactic. It's only 3 after. I wasn't going to include this, but these stories are so interesting. You know, if you have, what's one of the keys to a good coup? Thinking about this, you know, if you dispose of the king, you anoint a new one, you got to do it quickly. A good coup almost always has to happen with speed. You know, is anybody familiar with Falkery? You know, the July 20, 1944 assassination coup attempt on Hitler in Nazi Germany. Okay? That failed for a lot of reasons, okay? But one of the reasons it failed is because it didn't unfold fast enough. You know, it took hours and hours and hours after the attempt on Hitler's life for the coup party to get kind of the ball rolling, to try to get the overthrow of the Nazi party. It just was slow going. That can't happen because what happens in a coup if you're not fast about it? What happens? It gives the opposition time to what? React, right? They can mobilize their forces, right? Hitler and his people were able to counteract the opposition party, okay? So when a coup happens, you can't give the guy in power time to mobilize. You can't give it time to react. And so, you know, if Samuel anoints a new king, what do he and David need to do? They need to get moving right away. They gotta get their forces moving. They've got to act on Saul immediately. But what happens? Samuel goes home, and David goes back to herding his sheep. And it's a few years before they do anything. Completely the opposite of how a coup should take place. You know, it's almost 10 years until David comes to power, till David actually becomes king. A coup 10 years in the making never works, except when God is in control. God looks not at the heart, not how things are supposed to work, but he sets his own agenda. He looks at the heart. He chose David. Saul had everything going for him. He looked the part. So does David. But what's the difference between the two? Well, it's the heart. The heart is the difference between Samuel and David. So, you know, we look at outward appearances. That's just the way we are, isn't it? I mean, it's hard. It's hard. What election was it? Was it Kennedy and was it Nixon? That they thought Nixon lost because he was uglier than Kennedy?
Because it was the first election where TV really played a role.
Televised. Okay. Yes. Well, I know. Well, like with Roosevelt, you know, you don't show him in a wheelchair. You know, Bob Dole, they were hesitant to show him with his paralyzed arm. You know, appearances matter, whether we like it or not. Appearances matter, and in some way that's a little bit biblical too. I mean, you know, appearances matter. That's, you know, but the heart is at the center of things, and the Bible tells us about that in other places. And I want to give you just a couple scriptures as you can go home and look at today. What do we look for? Because, okay, so if we're supposed to judge according to what? The heart, the inward, what's the obvious problem with that? We can't see it. What can we see? We can see the outward appearances. How many of you who are managers or bosses have ever been burned hiring somebody who looked the part, who looked great, but stunk? Yeah, I have, you know, lots of people. They look good. They look like they know what they're doing, but they're horrible. They stink. They're no good. They're a worthless employee. We know what that's like. So how do we look at the heart? Well, we're not God, so we can't look at that, but we're given some guidance in Scripture. So if you go home, look at 1 Timothy 3. Okay, you can write those down. Or now these are leadership issues. So this is, you know, if you're looking for church leaders, if you're looking for pastors, you know, if you're looking for a mentor, if you're looking for a Sunday school teacher, these are things you look for that Paul says, here are reflections of the heart. 1 Timothy 3, 2 through 7 is one batch. And then the second batch is Titus. I think that's the next book over. 1st, 2nd Timothy, then Titus. Titus 1, 6 through 9. Let me just hit on a couple of these. 1 Timothy 3, he says, these are qualifications. These are qualities that you want in a leader. These are characteristics that you want in a person. Okay, let me read these, okay? They must be above reproach, husband of one wife. You could switch that out, wife of one husband, I suppose. Sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, and not a lover of money. And he goes on, okay? There's many listing things in there. And other than being able to teach and management, everything else is inward. Everything else is inward. You can't see those things. You can see management and you can see teaching, but it's a little bit tougher to see sober-minded, self-controlled. You know, sometimes you can see those as they work themselves out, but those are character issues. The same thing with the Titus ones. Those are character issues. Traits for all Christians are found in Galatians. If you go back to Galatians 5, and you can read that at home. These are the so-called fruit of the Spirit. I think the kids learned about that. So you can ask the kids about that. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Those are all inward things. Those are traits for all Christians. As Christians develop, as Christians mature, they all have love, joy, peace, patience, and all those things. I would venture to say that David had those qualities in general, and Saul probably didn't. Those are probably the differences between the two. So what do we leave here with? What do we leave here? Because I don't want to just end here and say, well, that's halfway decent information, but what does it mean for me? Well, a couple things. How many of you have ever thought that, well, I don't measure up to, I'm not sure I'm cut out to do this. I'm not sure I'm fit to do X. I don't look the part. I don't know how many times I've met people and they say, wow, you don't look like a pastor. And I'm never quite sure if that's an insult or a compliment. I just assume it's a compliment, but I don't know. I just kind of ignore it and hope that it's a compliment. So, that you may not look the part. Whatever it is. You may not think you're cut out for it. You may not think you're ready for it. You may not think you've got the outward appearance for it. But God sees otherwise. God knows otherwise. It's not the outward appearance. It's your inward appearance. It's the heart. Now that goes for other people too, doesn't it? It's fun to say, or it's nice to say, well, I don't know, I don't know if I'm physically cut out for that. I don't know if I've got the looks to do that or the whatever. But God looks at the heart. It's a little different to say, well, Larry doesn't look so much, but he's got it on the. We always the short way of saying that is we like to apply that ourselves. We're not always so keen to apply that to other people. But this story reminds us that again, we're quick to look at outward and dismiss people or accept people or put people into positions and things by just outward appearances. When God encourages, well, hold on a second. That person may not look like what you want that person to look like, but the heart may be exactly where it needs to be. That person may be exactly who you're looking for. And we might overlook it because we don't tend to look at the heart. So don't discount yourself. And don't discount other people. I think that's our main takeaway this, because God's a lot better at evaluating people than we are. God's a lot better at judging people than we are. And the heart's the thing that matters. And can you get a read on someone on their heart? I think so. I think over time you can get a read on somebody's heart. I mean, we know that. I mean, I think Christianity's gotten a bad rap, especially recently. Why? Because a lot of people, especially people who are on TV and in the media, they say one thing and then they act another way, right? It eventually comes out because you can't keep your heart hidden forever. You might get away with it for a while, even a few years, even 10, 15 years, but eventually it's going to come out. And I think you can get a read on, people can get a read on you and you get a read on other people by just taking your time and evaluating the heart and letting things expand and unwind.
It's like, people say, well, I can tell who that is by my first impression.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Yes. You can't judge a book by its cover. Anybody see those Dos Equis commercials with the most interesting guy in the world? You know what I'm talking about? The guy with the beard? Yeah. Those are funny commercials. And there's one, it says, Dos Equis, it says, what does he say? He's the only man that can accurately judge a book by its cover. So, first impressions aren't always accurate. That certainly doesn't seem to be the case with David. Let God do his work both in you and other people. Look at the heart. Let that come through both in yourself and in other people. Anything else this morning, and I will quit talking. He's like, yay. Anything else this morning? All right. Well, God's still doing a work in you and your heart. He's doing a work in all of us in our hearts. And that's what matters. We talked about that last week. God wants the heart.